All right, so we know that the perceived demand for a perfectly competitive firm is just going to be a flat line at that price, right? That P star. P equals MR equals demand. And then we also know that with a monopolist, a monopoly is going to have a perceived demand that's going to be downward sloping. And so somewhere in the middle between the two is going to fall our monopolistic competitor. And so it's going to be something like this. They have a little bit of price making ability, but nowhere near as much, nowhere near as much as the monopolist. And so how would a monopolistic competitor choose its profit maximizing price with us knowing that this is what the demand curve looks like? That's going to be our next part. So we're going to have price on the y-axis, quantity on the x-axis. We're going to draw a nice average cost curve. This one is going to, it's going to look a little skewed. It's going to start up high, it's going to go down, it's going to come up just a little bit. We've got average total cost right there. We're going to have the same marginal cost curve situation, Nike swoosh mark through the bottom. And now here's where things get hairy. Now we've got a demand curve that starts somewhere here and is downward sloping with, this has a slope of, it's like -1/2. So it's got half of the slope of a monopolist demand curve. And since this has a slope of -1/2, that means that our marginal revenue curve is going to have a slope of exactly 1 in order for everything to be copacetic. So now we've really deviated from the very simple situation that we had with perfect competition, right? But our rules stay the same. Our optimal allocation rule is the same. We're going to pick a Q star where our marginal revenue is equal to our marginal cost. So we are going to find our marginal revenue curve where it intersects our marginal cost curve, and that is going to be our profit maximizing Q star. Now again, a lot of us are going to want to just instinctively, X marks the spot, we're going to want to label this. This is nothing. Don't do it. This, whenever you have a downward sloping demand or marginal revenue curve, the point where you find the optimal quantity is the price where that is not relevant. Because again, we are always going to go from that Q star. So step 1 is find the Q star. Step 2 is find what price we're going to charge at Q star. So that means go up to the demand curve and then reflect that Q star off of the demand curve. And then lastly, in order to find our profit, we're going to take a shortcut. Instead of calculating the total revenue and the total cost and minusing one from the other, we're just going to go down. We're going to find what the ATC is that corresponds with that Q star. We're going to draw a dotted line there. And then we're just going to shade this rectangle as our profit rectangle.
Sorry, I've been waiting on that phone call since the 19th.
Oh, you're good. You're all good. Part of the joy of recording it is you can back it up and watch it later. So we're going to take our price minus our average total cost, multiply it by our Q star in order to get that profit square, profit rectangle. I keep calling them squares. They're very obviously rectangles. So now that this is happening, the question becomes, what is next? Well, similar to perfect competition, when there's free information here, so it's not as opaque. And so if one monocomp producer earns positive economic profits, then other firms will be tempted to enter the market. When other firms enter the market, this is equivalent to a shift in the demand curve. And specifically a shift down or to the left. And so when others see that we are making this positive abnormal profit, they are going to enter the market. We don't have the barriers to entry that we have in a monopolistic environment. And so when others enter the market, this shifts the demand curve down. Which also shifts our marginal revenue curve down. So we have a new marginal revenue down here, and we have a new demand curve over here. Actually, I'm going to draw this a little bit better. Apparently that was not better. Okay, hold on. That one. Okay, that makes sense. So this one. So we have a situation here where our demand curve is shifting down and our marginal revenue curve is also shifting down. So again, it seems very confusing. What should we be doing? We have a three-step process, right? First step is Q star is always where the marginal revenue equals the marginal cost, right? So I'm going to find where that marginal revenue, the second one now, is crossing the marginal cost, and I'm going to drop that down for my Q double star. And then, just like before, we're always going to go up to where that Q star intersects with the demand curve. And we're going to draw this as our new equilibrium price. That is not easy to see. Hold on, we're going to redo this with a different, I think we're just going to do white. Okay, it's a bit better. And now the third part of it, right, is to find where the average total cost is at that Q star. And then you calculate the profit square. Well, at this Q star, my average total cost is exactly the same, right? My average total cost is this yellow line. My average total cost is exactly the same as my demand curve. So we would label this, you know, P double star is equal to my average total cost at Q double star. And so this new equilibrium at Q double star is going to have an economic profit of 0. And when P equals ATC, right, then we end up with 0 in the parentheses, and anything times 0 is 0. So we see similar movements in the monopolistic competitive world as we saw in the perfectly competitive world, right? We see that abnormal economic profits incentivizes new entrants. New entrants then erode the abnormal economic profits to the point where firms are making 0 economic profits. So just like with perfect competition, the long-term equilibrium for monopolistic competition is for all firms to make 0 economic profits. Questions on monopolistic competition and the movements therein? Okay, we'll have the video to review later. I highly encourage you to kind of do some testing on your own. Part of the problem with economics is that it's not a spectator sport. It seems like it is, and a lot of things make a lot of sense until you actually have to do it yourself, right? So when you're reviewing this, when you're studying this, I encourage you to really try to like quiz yourself about it and try to test yourself without looking at your notes to see if you really do understand both the setup and then the resulting dynamics that happen as a result of that particular market structure.